Don't let your creativity stop. Dear Mini-Me, keep being creative. Honestly, you never stopped. Your creativity shifted in other ways. Hey everyone, it's Empress Lanice, and right now you are listening to Dear Empress and Friends Podcast. Welcome to Dear Empress and Friends Podcast. I'm your host, Empress Lanice. On this podcast, I share real life stories on how to live life beyond our own limits. And today's episode is from my book, Dear Empress, You Were Born a Star, which is out now on Amazon, chapter number 6, Don't Let Your Creativity Stop. Now, in this chapter, I talk about my creative side because from when I wrote this, and even still to this day, it kind of felt like I wasn't being creative anymore. When I first became an entrepreneur, or not even first became an entrepreneur, just in life, I was always creating. I was always drawing, writing for sure. I was writing poetry, writing articles, writing journals, writing stories. I was always writing. And I felt like a part of that person had disappeared because I was no longer writing in the sense of me being imaginative and just like creating stories. And I keep saying this word narratives because it started to show up to me in other spaces of like, oh, we do create narratives of like, we narrate what we want to see or what we believe is happening from our own lens. So I realized that I kind of just like stop creating. And I also, loved music. So I was writing songs as well. And when I became an adult and I just started working all the time, I really just kind of stopped doing it. Here and there. I'll dibble in it, but it wasn't as much as I used to do it. And what's so interesting about that is I am a publicist. So what we do is write. I haven't taken this title in a while, but I am a journalist too. I haven't done journalism in a while though, so that's why I kind of like don't really say it. But I used to cover, interview, write articles, and I enjoy telling people's story. That's how my first business, the L Spot, got started because I wanted to tell the stories of my friends and those that I just started to meet. And I felt like it became work. Like it was no longer something fun to do because now we're adding the pressure of deadlines. It wasn't just being immersed in the creativity of it. And it's also like looking at how to make money from it. So I started to kind of lose that passion. Like honestly, this book was the first book that I wrote. And granted, I wrote it in 2019, 2020. And I haven't written anything since. And it's like, 3-4 years later? And I haven't written anything since in this type of capacity. And now I'm re-inspired, to be honest. This book most definitely re-inspired me, as short as it is, because I was like hesitant to put it out because I felt like it wasn't as in depth, that I wasn't really going all in with these stories. But it was the start or the spark that I needed to get back into this creative side, because now I'm working on 2 different books simultaneously. And outside of writing, I also just like creating just whatever I see in my head, whatever I feel, whatever I think of, just doing it. When I became an entrepreneur, I had this vision of starting the blog, turn it into a whole media conglomerate, and doing public relations. Then I started doing concerts, special events, and it was all things that were in my head that for a long time, I didn't have any mentors. I didn't really have anyone to necessarily look up to because I was just doing things that I felt needed to be done. Me today, I'm looking for that person again, of just being able to see something and creating it and just making it from nothing to something. Even if it has been done before, it's just making it from nothing to something. Now that I'm older, yes, there is wisdom of seeking mentorship. But I think, to be honest and very transparent, the beauty of taking what is in your mind and creating it into something, especially something positive and positively impactful to the community or the world, is that you're able to create something from your lens. Because there's many people that done concerts, magazines, blogs, many publicists, many journalists. But I was able to pull from my lens and view of things, which now as I'm talking about it, may be the reason why I am the way that I am with just dealing with people in general and relationships, because my way of writing was always finding the positive and the light in someone and not necessarily focusing on the negative, and just bringing out the light in that person so that for them, if you keep highlighting the positive, that in my mind, it would outweigh for them to their way of being, of doing the negative or whatever is not so good for, society. So in my writing, it would convey that, even with, life's experiences that I've had. And also just the art of creativity, which can show up in many ways. Like, as I mentioned in the intro, that my creativity shifted. And it took me a while to really understand that it shifted. It wasn't that I wasn't being creative anymore the way that I once knew it was. It's just that the way that I did it had shifted, that I felt like I had creators or creativity block. And I don't think I did. I just didn't necessarily accept the fact that the look of it or the how of it has changed. But I want to highlight that as an adult, we get so caught up in life, we get so caught up in work, trying to survive and make a living, that we don't realize that the creativeness is where we can get unstuck or out of our own ways, because we're working our brains to imagine something new, something different, that in our subconscious mind, that we start actually creating that and bringing that forth. And my personal goal is to tap into that space all the time. I don't like adulting at all. I don't. I just want to be free. I just want to create, make things happen. If I decide to do a concert today, I do a concert today. If I decide I don't want to do one tomorrow, I won't do one tomorrow. Like, I just want to be able to kind of live my life in that way. But granted, that is not the common real world. However, I am working on that to be my real world. And it's all really, creativity is really about the perspective, about the view of what you see to be forth. That's why there's so many inventions. Like, who thought that we needed a microphone? Who thought that we needed a computer, a camera, books? Like, who thought that we needed these things, right? But it was their imagination for something greater or something that can solve a problem, whether if it's a small or big one. Like I have this coaster here, but who said I needed a coaster to put my cup on? But when I have a table that kept getting damaged, and I'm like, why is it getting damaged? Because I keep putting my cup, or there's a stain, a circle stain. Like something like this is very valuable to someone, because the value of keeping the integrity or keeping the table in good condition was more important. So let's find something that can prevent the table from getting damaged. So something so simple as that is creativity, is vision, imagination while solving a problem. And even if the creativity is to take people on different journeys outside of their own minds or their own real life experiences. Like as a kid, I've always enjoyed reading because it heightened my imagination. As the reader, I interpreted the words of the writer to what I would vision it to be. So many times where there's a book that's translated or transformed into a movie, we get disappointed because we had a certain view of what the movie would look like. That's because our imagination created a whole different world. And the beauty of that is that there can be a different world. That's why now movies are now creating different endings, where it's not the same ending. It could be a whole different one, because there's many possibilities, and the creativity heightens that. So for me, which I realized after rereading this chapter of my book, so go ahead and get your copy of the book, Dear Empress, You Were Born a Star, on Amazon. After rereading this chapter, I realized that my core is writing. My thing that I love is writing, because the fact that I wrote music, I used to write songs, and I used to write songs in songs as far as lyrics, words, but I also used to write songs to like play on a piano, and I forgot, like music sheets I used to write. I used to write stories, creative writing, writing stories, creating characters. I used to write poetry. I still do poetry. I just haven't done it since the pandemic. It kind of took me out of my flow, because I was actually about to do a bunch of shows as a poet, and then the pandemic happened, and then all my shows got canceled. So I haven't gotten back into it. But writing poetry, writing articles, me creating a bunch of magazines for people, for myself, creating the blog, the L Spot, that's all writing. Television, writing scripts, that's all writing. So my thing is writing, and it's so crazy that I stopped writing, and that's my core. Maybe that's what is missing for me in my life, of just writing and telling the stories, writing press releases, writing, just writing in general, like just making it fun again. And I'm realizing after rereading this chapter to do this podcast episode, I'm like, oh, I'm most definitely a writer, and my writing flows into different formats. So the fact that I'm already writing 2 other books simultaneously, I'm like, this is it. This is the it for me. This is where my creativity lives. And the hardest part I notice is writing nonfiction, because I'm telling my story. I enjoy writing fiction because I can tell stories without putting the actual names or labeling who it was. So I'm probably going to work on a fiction story as well. Just so I can express myself a lot more, where I don't feel like I have to like keep things closed in. But just don't let your creativity stop. Whatever that is for you, don't let that stop. That's who you are. That's what makes you thrive. That excites you. So just be with it, and not let adult life make you feel that you can't be creative, because creativity is what makes the world goes round. All right, so that's it. Don't let your creativity stop. And I will see you guys soon. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to Dear Empress and Friends Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platforms. Also, don't forget to get a copy of my book, Dear Empress, You Were Born a Star, which is available on Amazon. And also follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Empress Lanice. Peace.